Let's see. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's see here. Okay, I think that's good. Oh yeah, let me type in. Make sure. Please let me know if there are any audio or lag issues. Gotta always put that because people will just not let you know, which is very kind. But I want to know, and I'm gonna pin this. Cool. Okay. Hello. Welcome to the Black Ponderer. I'm Neil Trotter. Am I in the middle? Yeah, okay. I think I'm in the middle there. Yeah, my name is Neil Trotter. I'm the host of the show, the Black Ponderer YouTube channel where we talk about philosophy. It's a philosophy YouTube channel. And, you know, we're supposed to be primarily talking about books, but I just, my reading has been invested in terms of my, like, actual official traditional style books. I've been reading a lot of stuff that isn't as philosophical enough to make a YouTube channel. So we've been leaning toward these live streams, which are supposed to be just more, you know, loosey goosey, and it is. We just hang out, we have a good time. We, you know, not so much talking at you, it's talking with you. It's conversational, but you know, in the live streams we kind of dedicate that to just talking about just philosophical concepts, right? But recently we have been actually using it more to just talk about text excerpts, right? Yeah, because you know a lot of the books I'm reading currently don't warrant a book video about philosophy, so I'm just gonna bring it up to the live streams. And so I'm just I got to share with you some excerpts from some texts that I've been coming across because you know, reading is fun and I do it a lot. And we will. So today, what we're going to be talking about is an excerpt from is a book called "Religion, Theater, and Performance: Acts of Faith," and specifically this chapter is a little excerpt. Is from the chapter is called "Religion, Ritual, and Performance." It's by Ronald L. Grimes. And so, what are we going to be talking about? Again, we're going to dive into like religion, the secular, what does it mean to be religious, and how does ritual play into that? Let's see if I can bring up my description and click edit. So I said. Yeah, we're talking about how is religion performed? What role do rituals play in and outside of religion? What are the limits of definition to watch out for as we use them in our discussion? How are bodies encultured? How are bodies encultured? What does that mean? All this and more as we do a close reading of a text excerpt for this live stream. Join us. So, you know, you can feel free to chat in the comments or just watch in the background. No requirement there. Do whatever you want. And of course, like if you want to tune in later on, just watch the, I guess they call the video on demand, the VOD. I think that's what Twitch calls it. Hello, Nadia. How's it going? So I'm just going to dive in. And yeah, so you can, I guess they call it lurking. You can just chill and relax, or you can participate in the discussion. All good. Yeah, so I'm just gonna, so what I do in all of my videos is that when I'm reading the text, I just highlight things that I find fascinating, kind of speak to me. And then oftentimes, like in my videos, I'll pick particular highlights to create a theme of what to discuss. And I've done that here. We've got a lot of highlights, but I think I may just read all of them. We'll see, because it's just an excerpt. Oftentimes, though, I'd be going overtime, so we'll see. So let's see. The first thing I highlighted here: assuming ritual to be both performative and religious, use it as a bridging concept between the other two. I'm good. Looking forward to spring. Winter drags on a bit up here. How are you? I'm good. I'm, as mentioned, if you don't know, I'm from California, San Francisco Bay Area, so it's always hot. I mean, it's not always hot, but it's not like the Midwest where it gets like, freezing, below freezing, and like that usually never happens. So I hate winter. I despise winter. I don't like it. Some people love it, not me. But where I'm from, it'll snow like one day. Now it's been snowing like a little more often than usual. And now I live in Tennessee, Memphis, where it snows a bit more often. But it's not like the Midwest where it's like below like minus 10 degrees or some shit. Like I couldn't imagine. But I'm glad that the winter is gone. But the problem is here you got those 100-degree temperatures, and that's horrible too. Oh well. So the quote I read was, we're talking about ritual. So this is the first thing we want to talk about: performance versus religion, or is religion performative? Now, have you ever, just a question, just throw out there, have you ever been to church? Right? I've been to many churches. Most churches are more like social clubs, right? Which is why a lot of people decide to I'm not. Well, there's many reasons why people are not going to church anymore, or lots of religious institutions. But for me, it's like, I used to go to. I finally found a church, and I've gone back to it, but it took me a long time because church. I went to church, and it's like, this is just a show. Like, people are just. It's a club. It's like a social club. It's not. Nobody's actually acting out their beliefs. They're just like here to show off, And so it becomes this performance. And so we're gonna be talking about that. Religion as this like ritualistic performance, and what does that have to do with the actual beliefs? And is religion really about beliefs anyway, or is it all just like performance art? Like, what is it? So we're gonna dive deep into it. I've been to church a few times to listen to the beautiful Christmas choirs. Yeah, that's a ritual, a Christmas ritual, right? Playing Christmas carols, which they on their own sound very pretty. But if you listen to them like Christmas songs like Noel, for instance, which is, about the baby Jesus, like, many people listen to that song and they're like, they could care less about the baby Jesus, right? They just think it's pretty song or whatever. All these other songs that, sound nice, but, don't really care about the content of the lyrics. So, it's fascinating. People often object that religion connotates either a social sector or institution. And religion, they say, is rather a whole way of life, not merely some highly valued part of it. Okay. That's me. There, because it sounds pretty. Yeah. It is interesting when you really think about Christmas. I remember I went to a symphony last Christmas when they sang Christmas carols, and it's so like classical European look with the choir, and it's not very well, I guess it depends on your definition of soulful, but it's very technical, I would say. Like, you got the choir, and they're very particular about these are the soprano parts, these are the bass parts, these are like all the different, these are the tenor parts, and you got those singers that you can sing very high. They're like, oh, you can't. I can't reach that height. But you can talk about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and you can really get down. Anyway, so some people will say like, religion is not about institution; it's about like a way of life. Religion is a way of life. Is it though? I guess it can be, but and then maybe the way of life is not even about the beliefs is more just about the social club aspect of it, and that's the way of life. But then other times it's like, no, I'm acting out what I believe in, right? And what am I doing when I'm religious? Like the rituals, how does that reflect, this understanding of this is my way of life? That's what we're going to talk about. It's of recent vintage and its purview largely Western. Just talked about that. Christmas carols are very Western, aren't they? Western civilization. These have a history and come with baggage. Right. So, it's something to think about. To acknowledge and understand the limits of definition. Oh, yeah. That's what I wrote in my notes. We talked about that before in the previous live stream about definitions and their limitations. We'll put a pin on that as we keep going here. Obligations say what we mean by the debated terms. To resist becoming so bogged down in terminological quibbling that we are disabled from conducting research among real people in actual situations. So, what they're talking about is, so we've been trying to define several terms, right? I don't know if we even got to art yet. I don't know. I don't even remember. I know we talked last live stream. We talked about art, and I think one of those streams we talked about like queerness, right? But don't quote me on that because I don't remember. But okay. Let's just go to the definition of art, and we struggle with trying to define what art is, and here we're doing it with religion. What is religion? And the text is saying like, well, that's not easy to answer. It's difficult to put into words, and you don't want to get fixated on like, making a very concise, very succinct definition, right? You want to, because that's very limiting, and you're gonna not capture all of what religion is about. Right? Spiritual but not religious. So that's the saying, right? Oh, I'm spiritual but I'm not religious. That's the saying. Laying a conceptual wall between religion and spirituality is misleading. Is that like a new age type of thing? Let's keep going. Spirituality is the living of searching. That's what I put in my notes. I don't know what I was thinking there, but anyway, assume their interconnectedness. Oh, okay. So the reader is the author is like, let's just assume. Let's not try to separate the two. Why? Because the reason why you don't want to separate the two in his mind is like, well, you got to be honest about it. You got to be honest about the situation. Because some people will say like, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, and then they'll be into crystals or something. Like they'll be like, I'm into crystals, but then crystals that could become a religion too. Say astrology. What's your sign? I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And then they start talking about their belief system, and it's like, wow, that sounds a lot like a religion, right? So you got to be cognizant of that, right? Let's see. Spirituality is life lived in search of fundamental principles and powers. Oh, that's where I put my note. That's what that meant. Religion is spirituality organized into a tradition, system, or institution, and typically consisting of a set of interacting processes. So, what the author is saying is, hey, religion is like systematized, it's institutionalized, where spirituality is kind of like searching for fundamental principles of life and like higher powers and things like that, but without any type of not with any necessarily with any like systematic approach. So that's a very I would say uncontroversial, like not too much in depth contrast or like examination of the two. Well, we'll get into more like deep logical approaches to what these two terms means. So now the author brings up rituals. Rituals are among the constitutive process of religion, but some rituals also appear outside religion. They are not exclusive to it. Although a ritual may be religious, ritual is not religious, right? And we just talked about an example of that, like Christmas carols. Many people enjoy Christmas carols, and a lot of those people aren't religious, right? But they're definitely a ritual, and they're definitely a lot of those Christmas carols are rooted in religion. But like what Nadia said, they sound pretty, and they're like, I don't care about that part. They just sound nice, but totally cool. But I guess what the author is trying to say here is that it's not easy to like separate religion from other aspects of life, or it's not easy to like demarcate religion, because it's or just more generally speaking, it's not easy to like demarcate many things, right? Because you could be, for example, you could say like, well, I'm not religious, I'm something, but then you're doing like a lot of stuff that originates in religion. So that then we get into the ritual aspect of it. Let me read another quote. The shift from a discipline requiring practice or obedience is that of a text, symbol, or code requiring a reading or interpretation. The conclusion in both instances is that neither concept, religion or ritual, is universal, because each concept, religion, and ritual is culture and history bound. It is merely a beginning point. It should be qualified, even displaced by the terms and meanings encountered in specific situations. All right, then I put in my notes here. The definition of religion changes over time because it is influenced by history and culture. So what religion means today is not what religion meant like 1,000 years ago, for instance, right? Or, to that point, spirituality or ritual, right? So, and that's important to understand too, right? Okay, let's save that thought and we'll continue with the text. And then I underline, religion is a political weapon. Absolutely. It can be used as one, for sure, and has been. One cannot afford just to look at ritual and other associated words. One also has to study the genres for the documents in which they are embedded, as well as the historical circumstances in which both the documents and the words are used. Doing so consistently is a tall order. The word ritual has not always meant what it does now. Yeah, we'll start getting into like, well, what did this term ritual mean in the past? We'll get into that. But we'll just keep using the example of Christmas carols, which is definitely like a Christmas ritual. Even like the very ritual that is Christmas. Well, Christmas has a lot of rituals. You pull out the Christmas tree, you hang up decorations, you sing Christmas carols. It's interesting because so many people with so many different beliefs participate in Christmas, right? And it's interesting because it's a fascinating phenomenon, because it's like there's most. I wonder if it is true that it is most people. I actually would probably lean toward yes. Most people, yeah. Most people who celebrate Christmas, like probably don't really buy into most of its beliefs. Now, of course, like you got the Western world, which is mostly religious, but getting less so nowadays. But you have this. There's this there's this, I guess, misconception, or like, what is it? This false representation that because people in power are very religious and they're enforcing their beliefs onto others, there's this kind of this thinking like, oh, that just means, there's most people are religious, but no, it's just the most powerful people hold these beliefs, and actually a lot of those people don't hold those beliefs. They're just using them to their advantage to gain power, right? So do they actually believe these things? I don't know. Right? I would argue like a lot of these people don't. Right. So when you break it down, so you got the West, but then you also got like countries like Japan, for instance, which Japan celebrates Christmas, and their celebration of Christmas is on like as out of this world. You should check out like Christmas celebration in Japan. It's just like it's this huge like festival, like way more extravagant than it is in the United States of America. But they don't believe in any like the actual beliefs of it. They just like, it's just a fun time for them. And then there are other countries in the eastern part of the world where Christmas is also celebrated, but a lot of that beliefs are not. But what the interesting thing that happens is when you perform these rituals, what you actually are doing, whether directly or not or indirectly, is you are reiterating the beliefs, even though you might not believe. You're reinforcing the power structures that benefit from like these kinds of celebrations, right? Whether it's like capitalism or Christianity or so so I think that the author is talking about like, well, it's not easy to separate yourself, even if you say like, yeah, I'm not really religious, but if you're doing all these religious rituals, then one could even go further and say like, well, does religion really have to do much with belief? When the reality is many people who are religious, even though they like go to church, don't actually like seriously believe in the thing that they do. So in what way are you different? You could be very different, right? But you are still like acting out. So I guess the author is trying to give an alternative definition of religion that isn't like so rooted in like your necessity to believe in what the religion is saying. Right? And he's doing that by highlighting the very important aspect of religion, which is rituals. And like that's kind of how religion manifests. Does religion really like manifest itself through belief? Or does it manifest itself primarily through rituals, right? And I think the author is arguing like, well, actually, when you really think about it, religion is actually actualized, like manifests through ritualistic practices. And a lot of those rituals are performed by people who don't believe in religion, but they are like actively fueling the religion, right? It's kind of fast. So, but further, like the point that the author is making is like, well, maybe we should reevaluate what we mean when we say religious, or like reconsider the definition of religion, right? And why do that? Because then you're able to to think about religion in a more constructive way, like that's more like useful, right? You can better understand its effects, right? And then you can kind of address the problems of religion if you kind of understand its phenomenology better, right? Is what it's saying. I'll read another quote. A religion is, 1, a system of symbols which acts to establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations in men, and like other people besides men. That's my little footnote. By 3, formulating conceptions of a general order of existence, and 4, clothing these conceptions with such an aura of factuality that 5, the moods and motivations seem uniquely realistic. I like how, what was it, number 2? establishes powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations, right? A lot of rituals do that, like Christmas carols, long-lasting. I also get very nostalgic when you hear the Christmas music. You're like, oh yeah, I mean, those are long, pervasive, long-lasting moods, right? And motivations. The motivations is what? Well, be jolly, be joyful, and be charitable, and tis better to give than to receive. Those kinds of motivations. Right. In these plastic dramas, men attain their faith as they portray it. They act it out. They use the ritual. That's how they demonstrate that they believe, because they act it out. Right? The ritual allow the believer to act their belief. So in this way, like, belief is performative, right? And then but then we'll get to the part where it's like, well, what about all these hypocrites who are religious? Because most, well, how should I say, like, I was gonna say most, but I would guess I would go so far to say all religion has like huge members who are hypocrites, who like say they are these things. And it's Christianity is the hugest culprit, but Buddhism the same way, or like Islam, I mean, you could go, all these religions is like, yeah, like you say you're this, but then you do the exact opposite of what your religion proclaims. So like, are you actually play acting your religion? Not really. Do you really see that? However, then you have to expand the definition of religion, right? You could be like, well, maybe they're play acting, alterations of their religion, which don't follow like the old history old historical standards of religion. Like, those aren't applicable anymore. And this is why the author mentions, like, well, it's about historical context, is it? Right. And so in that way, religion is dynamic and malleable. It's like, well, that person isn't acting, for example, do not judge unless you yourself want to be judged. Well, that person is clearly judging, and he sure in hell doesn't want to be judged, right? But he's doing it. And then, somebody will clap back and be like, well, in modern times we have to do that. And that is the modern take of religion. It's like, and you might say like, well, that's not what the Bible said, but now you're getting into this whole realm of like, well, I mean, these religious texts have been modified throughout the ages. Like, so what is what's acceptable in these religions isn't necessarily like static or like unchanging, right? Now, should they or should they not be is a whole other question. The author's just saying like, well, that's what it is, right? Anyway, in ceremonies, oh my bad, I skipped. Social performance is ceremonial, an expressive rejuvenation and reaffirmation of the moral values of the community. Condensed reality itself rather than being a mere simulation of it. Right. So it's an expressive rejuvenation and reaffirmation of the moral values of a community. So that's kind of why churches kind of feel more like social clubs than actual places of worship, because they're just reaffirming moral values that the community holds true, which might not necessarily align with like the actual like beliefs. It's just like reaffirming the moods and the values of that social community, right? Which we see all the time, right? In ceremonies, performers epitomize rather than pretend. So they're not pretending, right? They're actually like saying, no, I'm acting this. When I say joy to the world, I mean joy to the world, right? But like the thing is like, so it's interesting because, using that example, joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive his gift. All right, okay. And then people will argue like, well, people who sing that, like how many gifts do they actually give to people? So are they pretending? No, they're actually like, that's what they mean, but they don't actually. So the thing is, like, religion is a kind of performance art where it's not pretending, right? Like they actually are trying to embody that, but they're doing that through a performance and not like actually doing it. So, but then what's the difference between actually doing it and then just performing it? Well, I would argue like, singing joy to the world, that's a performance. But then actually giving joy to the world without the singing part, that's doing, right? So, but some people feel like, well, I'm singing it, so that's enough. Well, no, or that's what they feel is enough. The individual is so viable a god because he can actually understand the ceremonial significance of the way he is treated, and quite on his own can respond dramatically to what is proffered him. Proffered. You can tell me, I don't know. In context between such deities, there is no need for middlemen. Each of these gods is able to serve as his own priest. So the ritual allows the believer to play God in a serious way. Right? The believer becomes God during the ritual, completely embodying the religion. Right? An example is like the ritual of Holy Communion. If you're like a religious person, you kind of about that, where you drink when you're like a Christian and you really pay attention in Sunday school. You probably know about Holy Communion, where you drink wine and you eat the little the bread wafer, and apparently like you're actually like drinking the blood of Christ and you're actually eating the flesh of Christ. Like that's I think they call it like transfiguration or something. Like it's a whole thing, right? I grew up learning. Most Christians that in Sunday school you learn about this, right? And so in that way, like you become one. It's a kind of becoming one with God. And there's many rituals like this in many religions, where it's literally like you become like one with God. You begin to know God through this kind of ritualistic, like metaphysical thing that you believe in. And so what happens, it is very serious, right? I guess the thing is, like, I would input my 2 cents is like, yeah, that kind of play acting, and I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way. I mean to say that performance. But I will say, like, as a critique, is that kind of performance distance themselves away from like actually like doing the work of their belief. It's like, I don't have to input so much effort throughout my day to actually live the life of Christ the way Christ said that I should live, because I just go to church every other week and I drink the blood of Christ and I eat the flesh of Christ, and so that's that I'm good. I don't actually have to like when I get slapped, I don't really actually have to turn the other cheek. All I have to do is go to church and just drink the blood of Christ and eat the bread and the flesh of Christ, and then I'm saved. Like, I don't have to actually do all that other stuff that so it's kind of a distancing. You're becoming God, but you're not actually following through with like the teachings or whatever religion that is. And you can take that. I speak for Christianity because that's the one I was brought in. But I mean, you can say the same thing about other religions too, right? And then the outcome of treating ritual as a species of performance is a theory of ritual that places it among rather than above or outside a large range of other cultural activities. Ritual is by definition transformative, right? So we just talked about that. So it's not like theater, right? which is not negative. We're not putting down theater either. That's cool. That's a great art. It's not, there's similarities, but we're not trying to make that comparison. But it is a kind of performance, right? And the author says it's a transformative performance, as we discussed, right? You are literally like transforming, whether it's in your mind, right? It could, exclusively be in your mind, as many people would probably argue. And some super religious people be like, no, this is actually happening. I'm, becoming one with the divine through my my performance of this ritual, right? And so it does become transformative in that way, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and that's true. And so we got to think of it like that, right? We can't just say like, well, they're just actors on a stage. Well, there's more to it than that. It facilitates reflexivity, seeing ourselves act. Restored behavior allows performers to become someone other, or as Skechner, Skechner is just which I'm sorry, I probably pronounced that. So the author references a lot of other authors, which is cool. But as his other author says in his impish manner puts it, to re-become what they never were. Right? So what do I mean by that? Like born-again Christian, for example, quotes. Able to observe oneself, become a spiritual being, watch oneself return to spirituality, rediscover yourself as a spiritual being that you are, right? And another example of that would be like a baptism, right? Which is another like ritual, very popular in our modern times still. When you become baptized, oftentimes you're a little kid, and it's like this idea of like, oh, now you're becoming one with the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. You now know the Holy Spirit can enter into you, and you now have the ability to be one with God. That type of, through like your interface that is the Holy Spirit, right? It's again, it's kind of like a re-becoming, like it's a transformative thing. And so, like, what's the point of this? Like, the author is just saying, like, religion is about ritual. It's about ritual. It's not. If we were just to say like religion is just about belief, like that would be incorrect, right? People act out these beliefs through rituals. If you take away the rituals, you wouldn't have religion, right? Even just the ritual of just going to a religious institution, whether that be a church, a building, or a mosque, or a temple, right? Let's see. In my view, it is less confusing to use action rather than performance as a parent term, and to use distinctive verbs for what ritualists and performers do. When speaking technically, I prefer to say that ritualists enact rituals, whereas as actors perform plays. Oh, okay. So there's some terminology here. Let's see if I can just skip this. I'm going to skip that because now they're just talking about terminology, which is important, but let me go to this. My view is that ritual just as often confirms the status quo or fails, and neither of these facts make the event not ritual. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was talking about, right? So these rituals just confirm status quos, right? The status quo. And they're not actually like making people do, things. Not only are they not like doing things different than what society tells them, they are not like growing as it is. I say this as a religious person. I got a little cross here. I'm not. I mean, I am. If you're familiar with the Black Ponderer, I critique the religion all the damn time, right? But religion has the opportunity to help somebody grow as a person, but oftentimes we get stuck in these rituals where we're not thinking. We're just like we're enacting these actions that we are told make us closer to the divine. But then, really they're just reiterating like the power structures that that those in power rely on. They rely on these divine beings like God to exist, and that's where their power is coming from. Like, I'm talking about like our American government or like a lot of Western government for that matter. And you can go to the Middle East and, over there, it's a lot of that is complete theocracy, right? Where it's just literally like priests are the head honchos over there. So, yeah, it's fascinating. So, and then, I'll just take it back to like our original example with the Christmas carols, where it's, Christmas carol. It, again, like, I love Christmas carols. They're awesome. But by singing them, right, you are reiterating the foundation, like what the society is built off of, like those values are just being reiterated, right? And so you're kind of doing a status quo thing. And we think what's fascinating about it is that we think we're doing good different things. We're like, we're singing about peace and joy, but really it's more like a sedate, like the medicine used to sedate you, right? It's just a way to say like, yeah, I'm doing my part. Like, oh yeah, actually the world is good after all. See, of this beautiful music that's singing about peace and love. But it's just like, well, you're singing all that, but what are you actually doing to contribute to the peace and joy and love in society, right? And and then you use these songs as like your substitute for doing that, which is a lot of spiritual practices. And then even it transfers over to like the non-spiritual people or like people who are non-religious. They still partake in all these rituals that the religious institution has set up. Right? And they're like, yeah, this is good, but it's like, what are you doing that is actually, So that's what I think the text is saying here. Let's see. In some societies, rites are not rites, R-I-T-E, rites like the rituals. That are performed, right? Not R-I-G-H-T, like the fundamental human rights, the right to land, liberty, and prosperity. No rights, meaning the R-I-T-E, the steps you perform in a ritual, the rites. So in some societies, rites are not thought to transform, that is, to change things fundamentally. Instead, rites of birth, coming of age, marriage, and death protect participants, or they celebrate transformations that have already occurred by other means. So, he's bringing up examples of what we just talked about. Rites of birth is what? Like a baby shower, or like, gender, what is those parties where they gender reveal parties, right? All these kinds of, or like a marriage, I'm married myself. Lots of people get married, right? Whether they're religious or not religious. And it's for protection, right? It's for societal protection. It's helping you coming of age, graduations, quinceañeras, bar mitzvahs, right? All these sweet 16 parties, the whole nine, right? A lot of these things aren't necessarily religious, but when you really think about it, like, well, maybe they are, right? Because a lot of them are rooted in religion, like these practices come from religions and then they've been abstracted out. And so one could say like, well, they're secular now. But are they basically doing the same thing that they were doing when they were in the realm of religion, right? So in that way, can you separate the religious from the, and we do these things for protection, right? Not so much that we believe in the things that these, use an example of marriage, and to just go further into it, an example would be, I was able to provide healthcare insurance to my daughter because I was married. Right? You got to be married to adopt my daughter and put her on a healthcare plan. And I knew, like, okay, going through the adoption process and the marriage process made that a lot easier. Yeah. Did that have anything to do with my belief in the sanctity of marriage? Like, I could care less about that. But I knew that it would afford me the ability to put my family on the health care. Right. Uh-oh. I may be getting some lag here. But I think it's just temporary, right? Yeah, you may be seeing some lag. I'm sorry. That's all. It's outside my control. That's the internet. But we'll just keep it rolling. We'll just keep it rolling. Which rites transform and which do not should be a matter of observation, not of definition. Not all ritual actors intend to transform. But even if they do, the intention does not guarantee the results. A group may intend to transform and fail to do so. So, that's like church, right? Like, you might actually create people who believe, but you might have some non-believers, but that's, neither here nor there, right? Let me see here. I might want to skip to some good stuff. Let's see. Not only were actors deemed unruly. I'm trying to get to some good stuff here. The historical divide resulted in Okay, I'll read this one. Ritual as a domain. Not only were actors deemed unruly, theatrical performances sometimes provided stiff and dangerous competition for liturgical like a liturgy. Right? Is liturgy like a religious ritual? I think literally it's too many lits. See, I'm not like Generation Z, so I don't say lit all the damn time. So. Liturgical ones, right? So what was I saying? I was saying, like, so it's talking about it throughout history. In the old school days of European Christendom, or like old school European Christianity, right? You had the theater, and that was actually conflicting with the power of Christian institute, the church. These are two power structures, right? And so there was this competition. So this historical divide resulted in a conceptual one. The secularized and pluralistic contemporary European American West is heir to this explosion, leading us habitually to segregate ritual and performance. Because ritual and performance are associated with different social institutions, the synagogue and the theater, for instance, Western scholars tend to stash them in different mental drawers, right? Because there was a schism between the theater and the church, and old school European churches like, okay, theater, you're going too far. You're just entertainment. And where the church is higher than you, right? But before then, like theater and religion, like people performed their religion in a more theatrical way. And that was okay. That was acceptable. Right? That was good. And so the author said, like, we got to return back to that kind of way of thinking, because all of our rituals that we do today are a callback to like when theater and religious practices were basically one and the same. Right? You know, baptisms, you know, confirmations, even like the benediction, putting the cross. And then you could go further and say marriage is, you know, birthday, even stuff like birthdays, right? But, you know, definitely we talked about like baby showers and things like that, right? Even they, like, you can trace them back to religious practices, right? And why do they exist? We can know a lot about why they exist and what do they actually do, what role do they play in society today by looking at the past, its past relation with religion, right? Let's see. All right. A working definition of ritual. Their usefulness in some situations. So definitions can be useful. Just got to acknowledge their limitations. Okay. So let's talk about what is a religion, or what is a ritual? Ritual is a embodied, condensed, and prescribed enactment. Okay. And then do that. Okay, advantages are its simplicity and portability. The magic of a definition only works if you can offer an exposition of it. Ritual, insofar as it can become the object of study, is evidenced by gross motor movements or a studied practice lack of them in the body, hence the qualifier embodied. Because ritual is in and of bodies, it is also cultural, since bodies are encultured. What does that mean, encultured? Well, that means the way you perform in the world has a lot to do with the culture that you live in, right? You're like, well, what does that mean? Well, why do you get married, for example? All right, and you know, why do you seek marriage? You know, for example, or like, you know, a lot of, and you know, the search, we're using. Let's just use marriage as an example. Not everybody is the main point in life. Lots of people don't seek marriage. A lot of people do, though. But a lot of that seeking of marriage, or something like marriage, right? Domestic partnerships and things like that, is in and of itself a whole litany of performances. You know, going out on dates and you know, going steady. Even like, I guess that's old, right? Going steady. You know, becoming exclusive, right? And then of course there's like all types of other stuff, like, you know, I'm just talking about the traditional marriage, which still is a huge, you know, quite alive nowadays. And a lot of life is based off that. What I'm saying is, like, a lot of performance, a lot of life activities revolve around this ritual of marriage, right? And so, like, a lot of your like bodily movement is dictated off of like lots of rituals, right? Whether it's graduation, like to get that piece of paper, and that might just be like, hey man, I just gotta graduate so I can you know, get that money, get a career. And then other people are like, hey man, I'm trying to graduate so I can get my education, I'm trying to learn, because this establishment's so it could be a lot about safety. And then so the author talked about that too. It's like, hey, a lot of this has to do with safety, but that doesn't mean that you can't remove that from the religious origins of these things, right? And so you have to understand that religion, it its practices throughout the ages, dictates a lot of what we do. And so to that end, what really is religion? Like, is it a belief system, or is it just a collection of rituals that we perform, right? Whether we believe in them or not, right? It's fascinating. Ritual is not identical with pretending. However, because you're not pretending. When you sing joy to the world, you really do mean, I want joy to the world. I'm not pretending that, but however made up they may be, rituals are not regarded by participants as mere fiction or a game. Hence the term enactment. To enact is to put into force or into play. Ritual is a continuum. Mm-hmm. Cool. And then I'll say here, since all of these qualities mark activity in various cultural domains, religion, the arts, politics, so these are all things that religion interfaces with, etc., there is little temptation to regard them as a special purview of one domain. So if you really look at it realistically, religion enters many different domains, and it's hard to say like, well, this over here is secular and this over here is religious. But you know, and then you can get into the whole like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, we should separate, like, you know, church from state should be separated, right? Which, you know, I'm always like for 100%. I'm a huge proponent of church and state, even though it's, you know, this thing is in our American, is in the Constitution of the country I live in, but we don't have that, which is sad. And why don't we have that? We don't have it because religion and state, sad to say, like a state and religion cannot be separated. Why? Because a religion, like a state, is a conception of a religion. Like the religion has created the concept of the state, right? So if you want to separate church from state, what you would need to do is abolish the existence of a state, right? That's what you would have to do. Which, hey, I participate in anarchist groups, so I'm not super against statelessness. But it's just things to think about, right? Because I am a proponent, like, acts of governing should be separate from religious belief systems, right? But we also have to understand, like, well, our government is a creation of religion. Like, religion created our government, right? So that's why you can't separate it from it, because it is a creation, even though we like to think like, well, no, we should separate it. It's like literally manifest destiny. It's like the resulted in the United States government. So I mean, so it's just, and so like when you think about, like, well, why the hell can't we separate church from state? When thinking about this way, it's like, oh, that's why. So now we're getting into the realm of usefulness. It's like, okay, now we're starting to identify the actual problem. It's like, so now we can start to do something about it. Like, oh, the real issue is like, we can't separate church from state because church and state are basically the same shit. The state is a kind of religion, right? Which is fascinating to think about, and so now you're starting to think about it realistically, and so you have to like introduce a new set of solutions. I guess one of them would be anarchism, right? But then you gotta really think about that deeply, right? Because when you start talking about large populations, how does anarchism work? So and then we can't discount, like, there are some useful applications of religion too. Can't discount that too. So it's a complex issue. But that's what the authors say. It's like, religion doesn't belong in one special purview or one domain. Like, that's like, to think of it that way is like you're kind of ignoring reality, right? So you got to think about it realistically. I put in my notes, the definition of religion is multidimensional. It depends on the context and orientation of the study. Okay? Yeah. So I think, did I go through all of it? Yeah, I think that's all the quotes I wanted to highlight in this talk here. Did we finally, like, am I going to, like, just do an hour? Because that would be nice. I mean, I love the long streams are great too. Nothing wrong with the long streams, but, the plan is to do it for 1 hour. So it looks like we actually have, we're good to go. We're good to go. And that's great. I just want to thank everybody for joining today, or anybody who's going to watch later. I think there might have been me cutting out some internet problem issue, but you know, that's what it is. I believe like YouTube is it's so intelligent in terms of its video processing. Like if it'll put the disjointed video together into a seamless video that you can watch later when I post this as just a regular video. So please check that out. Like people watching later might not even know that. So that's cool. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully see you next week. We'll see. Might be, you may not see me next week because I might be really busy, but we'll see. But until then, peace out. You've been watching The Black Ponderer. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.